Jihad, jihad, what does it mean? Is it dropping off the kids at school? No, it's blowing you to smithereens. If you think otherwise, you're a fool. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the smash hit series This Week in Jihad, and we have none other than the great David Wood with us tonight. David, how are you? David, are you still with us?
Sorry, I was trying to share. I was trying to share that we're live while listening to your increasingly sophisticated meter schemes.
Just call me Chaucer, man.
and line 17 has to rhyme with line 2, and
That's right. Yes. I've been conferring with Ezra Pound all week. Anyway, let's go to Jihad. There's a lot of Jihad. We have not been here for 2 weeks, but I'm only going to deal with the 1 week because there's so much Jihad in it. And I think, David, let's start with the nomenclature. With stupid infidels and their stupid nomenclature. This is an ongoing war. And some interesting things. 3 interesting nomenclature stories. This might even be the nomenclature edition, but we'll see how that shakes out. In the first,
make sure you put that in the title. This Week in Jihad nomenclature edition, because that's like you're going to get millions of clicks for that.
People will love that. That's what people think about all the time is nomenclature. But it's important.
I know I do.
It is, because David, you'll see, okay, mock if you will, but you will see momentarily how important this is. Now, I'm not going to call it the nomenclature edition. I'm going to call it something else. Something else will come through in the next 58 minutes, but nonetheless, this is a very important aspect of the entire jihad. In the UK, David, in insane Britannia, a Muslim police group has said that it wants the term Islamist to be dropped from counter-terror policing because of nomenclature. It's Islamophobic. Now, I thought that's bitterly ironic because the term Islamist was invented in order to distance jihad from Islam.
Yeah. And that's just amazing. So did everyone catch that? The term Islamist was made just so you didn't have to call the terrorists Muslims, right? Because there was this, if you call this guy screaming Allahu Akbar a Muslim, that makes it sound like Muslims have something to do with these terrorist attacks. So they make up this term Islamist. And so you can, so that, it's a shorter way of saying Islamic extremist or something like that. And in order to differentiate them from, the Muslims who aren't trying to violently subjugate you. And so, Robert, you're saying now they're saying you can't say it. You can't have that word because it's got Islam in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they said. It's got Islam in it. It's going to make people think about Islam in connection with terrorism, and we can't have that. Of course, that means we can't even pay attention to what the terrorists say because that's all full of Islam. But I think this is so ironic because for years, people have been going all self-righteous on me and saying, and you and everybody else saying, I speak about Islamism. I don't speak about Islam. The problem is not Islam. The problem is Islamism. And now here's a bunch of Muslims, the Muslim police in Britain saying, well, really, you can't say Islamism because it's not even far enough away from Islam for their satisfaction.
Yeah, so you can't even have the word in there. We need to make a skit. I wonder if anyone's done this, a skit where like jihadis get increasingly frustrated that they can't even say what their ideology is because Western media won't report it.
I'm all for that. Yeah,
but notice. I mean, if they're looking for a new term, if Islamist doesn't work, you already came up with the term misunderstander.
Yes, that's right. They misunderstand.
Yeah, they're
the noble religion of peace.
The misunderstanders of Islam, misunderstanding again.
So we could even have a beauty contest and choose misunderstander of 2022. In any case, thank you very much.
Good.
Okay, in Canada, the famed Imam Yunus Kathrada, who has been in the news many times before for his statements of forthright Islamic belief, which always shock Western journalists because they didn't think that any Muslims actually believed in Islam. Yunus Kathrada said this past week that the term radical Islam is bad. That only enemies of Islam or people who are ignorant use it. And Islam is...
Look, no matter how much we compromise and give them everything they want, it's not enough, right? Because if you ask me for, okay, what are the terms there? Because notice, it seems like you do want to distinguish between, Muslims who want to kill you and Muslims who don't want to kill you. It seems like you do want different categories. But since the ones who want to violently subjugate you are actually following exactly what Islam teaches, it seems like you would call them, that regular Islam, and then what the genuinely peaceful ones are doing, call that something else, like Islam light or the Walt Disney version of Islam or watered down, whitewashed Islam or something like that, right? Call that something different, Islam light or something like that. But no, they want to make the people who don't follow Islam the true Muslims, and the ones who actually follow Islam and its commands to violently subjugate the world, those aren't the real Muslims. And so they come up with these additional terms, but then they have to take all reference to the ideology that motivates them out of the description. It's just it's wild stuff.
And notice that Yunus Kathrada is coming at it from the opposite point of view as that of the Muslim police in the UK. Yunus Kathrada says, and I'll quote him here exactly, let me say from the outset, we hear this terminology a great deal. Islamic extremism, radical Islam, and moderate Islam, as opposed to radical Islam. We hear these terminologies very often and we read about them, but I want to tell you from the beginning that the only ones who use these terminologies are either enemies and opponents of Islam, or those who are ignorant and have no understanding whatsoever of what Islam is, who are out to distort the image of Islam. Now, Yunus Kathrada, he's what you would call an Islamist. And so he's saying you can't use these terms because they distance Islam from jihad, and the Muslim police in the UK are saying you can't use these terms because they don't distance Islam from jihad enough.
Seems like there's not just here but everywhere. It's all a war on language.
Yes.
All these guys think if they can just control the language, they can control thought.
Exactly. They got that from Orwell and Newspeak in 1984. He didn't write it as a manual for a totalitarian state, but nonetheless, some people are clearly taking it as such. David, the crowning craziness in the nomenclature department this week, and I assure you I'm not going to call it the nomenclature edition, but nonetheless, the crowning craziness maybe of this entire series, really, comes out of Britain, of course, where a Muslim who is gay and is campaigning for gay rights within Islam. His name is Hakan Qureshi, another Qureshi. And he was speaking at Wood Green Academy in Wednesbury, West Midlands. And he said that the 9/11 hijackers were Muslims. The police were called. He was accused of Islamophobia. He's been getting death threats. Because, of course, everybody knows that the 9/11 hijackers were Methodists.
This guy's got it rough. I mean, he's going to catch it from everyone. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Jihadis want to kill him for his views, and the police want to come after him for his completely different views. That's gotta be rough. That's gotta be rough. It's like, the jihadis just kicked down my door. What am I gonna do? Let me call the police. Sorry, sir, you brought this on yourself for all the horrible things you said about 9/11 having something to do with Islam.
Well, these are the same police who persecute Hatun and have her arrested at Speaker's Corner after the Muslims harass her. So it's no surprise, really.
But they had to pay for that thanks to good Christian lawyers.
Maybe Kakan Qureshi can get a nice payout. But in the meantime, everybody's all upset that he actually had the audacity to say that the 9/11 hijackers who screamed Allahu Akbar, and here I actually have a quote here from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other 9/11 plotters who were endlessly about to be on trial. And they say, "We ask to be near Allah. We fight you and destroy you and terrorize you. The jihad in Allah's cause is a great duty in our religion. But don't call them Muslims."
Yeah.
Anyway, let's call this the World Cup edition, David. This is the World Cup season.
Ooh,
and
World Cup.
The World Cup edition of This Week in Jihad with a nomenclature corollary.
It's a sport I hear about every year, but
yeah, I know. Nobody actually. Does anybody watch soccer, really? I mean, I think God gave you arms. If you can't use them, then it's worthless.
You know, it's funny for people who are watching in other parts of the world, like
who are all offended now.
Yeah, that's guys. That's how it is in the U.S. We got football, baseball, and basketball, and soccer's in a different category. But yeah, once you go outside, I was shocked. I went to Greece when I was younger, and during the World Cup, you go to a restaurant, no one's serving you until there's some sort of break, right? They're all gathered around this tiny little TV back there, because this was like early '90s. They're all gathered around this TV in the restaurant. No one is paying any attention to you. So yeah, it's pretty big elsewhere.
Yeah, it's huge, and they even call it football. So
they stole our name.
Yes. But anyway. The nation of Qatar or Qatar, I've heard it pronounced all kinds of ways lately. But anyway, Qatar is in a lot of trouble because they paid a lot of money to get the games, the FIFA World Cup. I don't know, what does FIFA stand for? Everybody's always saying FIFA, and I don't know what it means. The football something or other. Football International Football Association. Anyway, that plays soccer.
The fake international football.
Yes, yes, that's it. So they obviously wanted to spend all this money. They built all these stadiums that they're not going to be using in another month. They did all this in order to get these games to apparently improve the condition of the country and to improve the public relations, the image of the country, I mean, not the condition. And now the whole world is kind of appalled that they're a Sharia state and they're enforcing Islamic law, and they're actually seeing, Islamic law really is like this. And they're seeing that they've been lied to all these years. And so it's kind of fascinating to see all the stories coming out that show on the one hand you got all the stupid infidels, and on the other hand you got the Qataris being completely forthright about what they're all about. And what did the stupid infidels expect? Like Budweiser. Budweiser paid $75 million, and you can get cans of beer that say the official beer of the FIFA World Cup 2022, but you can't get it in Qatar. At the games themselves, they ain't selling any beer.
It is funny how people were you expecting this place to be some, leftist LGBTQ paradise? What were you expecting? But it does seem like they just hear so over in the West, who are the people that a lot of people think of? It would be like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, Keith Ellison, and they're all extreme far left. So they think, that's got to be what real Islam is like, not not this jihad and Sharia stuff. That just comes from people like Robert Spencer. And then And notice, I mean, it's not. They're not even getting like Sharia in all its glory. They're getting a pretty watered down,
Hmm.
tame version of some basic Islamic law, and they're horrified at it. It's like,
Yep. They
man,
really
what?
did think that it was going to be a leftist LGBTQ paradise. The USA soccer team even changed its logo. It had this shield that said USA and it was red, white, and blue underneath. And it changed it to the LGBTQ rainbow colors. But they get over there and they're arresting people for wearing the rainbow colors. So the USA team had to go back to the dreaded American flag.
Poor
And
people, poor Americans. They're being oppressed.
meanwhile, you'll never guess who they brought over because it's a big Dawa situation, and they have been trying to convert people to Islam. They're claiming that 500 people have converted already to Islam. They've commissioned da'is, Islamic preachers, preaching in pretty much every language, hundreds of them. They're all trained in Dawa. And who did they bring over, David?
Zakir Naik. I saw
That's
that.
right, our good friend.
And they don't realize how this stuff backfires on them, which I don't understand, because Islam as an ideology is built for long-term survival and effectiveness. This has nothing to do with whether it's true. Any ideology that's lasted 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years has to have some characteristics that make it long-term effective. And so, you look at Islam and this methodology that's built into it. When, hey, you're a minority, call for peace and tolerance. You get stronger, then you start waging defensive jihad, so everyone knows not to mess with you. And then once you form the most powerful section of a society, then you violently subjugate and enforce Islamic law and don't allow any criticism. And this has worked really, really well for a long time, especially all the, promising people an eternity of deflowering virgins in paradise and so on. You get a lot of aggressive people on your side when you're making those kinds of promises, and you go out and you can violently subjugate a lot of people. And so it's built for this long-term effectiveness. And yet the people, the Dawa-minded people, they're so short-sighted frequently, right? Like, if I could just do this, then, and they don't realize, the impact this has down the road. And so with Zakir Naik, let's bring Zakir Naik in. We've got some people who are dumb enough to convert, because they're not examining anything he says. They're just listening to him and thinking that this guy tells the truth when he's like the biggest liar in history. And some people who are dumb enough to convert based on hearing Zakir Naik. Guess what? Some of those people are eventually going to look things up. In fact, the statistics show over half of people who convert to Islam leave it within 2 years. So they're all happy when all they're doing is creating more ex-Muslims by doing this. They're creating more ex-Muslims. Now, you'll probably get some lasting converts, but you get some ex-Muslims who are going to be ticked off that you duped them into converting to something based on lies. And then in addition to that, they have this image problem where all these Muslim nations blasted Nupur Sharma for saying, for just, I mean, she's mentioning as like a hypothetical, hey, if you want to start attacking me here, I could bring up Aisha, I could bring up that kind of stuff. Is that the direction you want to go in? And that was enough to like try to destroy her and call for her death. And yet they're bringing in, how many times has Zakir Naik been in trouble with the law for all the things he's done over the years? And then
Plenty.
That's who you get. That's who you get, Muslim countries, like a big slap in the face to India when you're saying India should be walking on eggshells around you, tiptoeing around you, not to say anything that could possibly offend you. And then you throw Zakir Naik in their face.
And that's not all. They won't allow cooked kosher food. I don't understand the distinction there. Do you? You can have raw kosher food, but you can't cook it. And they won't allow any Jewish prayers anywhere on the premises. But the cooked kosher food I didn't get. They said female fans, if they're not dressed properly, will go to jail.
And that is one of the places that we've heard repeated news stories over the years.
Yes.
out of, where a woman will get raped. She'll go and report the rape to police. Hey, I was raped. The police will bring in the guy. He'll say, no, it's totally consensual. And then police will say, oh, okay, well, you can't prove your case against the guy because it's your word versus his, but you have admitted that you had sex with him. By saying that you were raped, you admitted that you had sex with him. He says it was consensual, so we're going to punish you. Mm-hmm. And then the women have to flee the country because they'll go to prison for being raped in that place.
Oh yeah. So that's the World Cup. It's very exciting times. I have no idea who's going to win, but I think Qatar has already lost. Anyway, let's go to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is also losing. Although they are putting up a fight, there is, at last count, there are 326 people murdered by the regime security forces, 15,000 arrested. Security forces are now opening fire on protesters indiscriminately. They even opened fire in a metro station in Tehran. Meanwhile, the protesters, in an extraordinarily significant move, have torched the home of the Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic. I don't think there could possibly be a clearer signal that they do not want an Islamic Republic.
And I do not want one for them.
Indeed.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say a World Cup tie-in here actually got international headlines that the Iranian national team in Qatar did not sing the Iranian national anthem in solidarity with the protesters back home.
Yeah, it is cool because we've talked about this repeatedly because this has been going on for a while. But if you are the Islamic government in Iran, you have to crush this rebellion because they're not going to be nice if they win, right? They're not going to be nice to these guys who are raping women and doing all this. They're not. It's going to be it's probably going to be a bloodbath if they don't flee. Of course, I have no doubt that Western nations will say, "Oh, let's bring in the entire Iranian government to the West, because they need asylum here." Mm-hmm. So the government, I mean, they have to win because they're doomed if they don't, and so they have to crush the opposition. But the people, they realize, no, we have to stand our ground because it's now or never. If we don't win right now, no one's going to get on board next time. Because if they get us to back down now, we're doomed for the future. And meanwhile, the entire Muslim world is watching, and women in Afghanistan and so on are watching, saying, "Can they actually pull that off in Iran? Can women actually pull this off there?" And so the whole world is watching, and doesn't look like it's going to be pretty. But I still would love. I mean, you remember the collapse of the Berlin Wall, Robert? This would be way cooler.
That was pretty cool. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an extraordinary thing, and it would be. You're right. It would be even more extraordinary if I witnessed in my lifetime the fall of the Islamic Republic. After all, I saw it founded in 1979. I was 17 years old, and I'd love to see it end.
And by the way, that had to be especially rough. I mean, after Reagan ordered him, after Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." How do you do it after that, right? I mean, how does anyone do it after that? Because it looks like you're just taking an order. But remember when politicians were cool, Robert?
Those were the days indeed, David. Anyway, a lot of terrible stories out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but it looks as if they are trying, meanwhile, to create a diversion. The Navy and Coast Guard, that is of the United States, intercepted a boat carrying 180 tons of explosive material from Iran to the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite Houthis in Yemen, who would use it against the Saudis. Making war with the Saudis would probably be intended to unite the country behind the mullahs and divert attention away from the protests. In any case, that still could happen. Meanwhile, there've also been a wave of resignations among the state broadcasters. And that is a very welcome sign because it indicates that there is a waning of support among the regime loyalists. Because, if anybody with half a brain in Iran knows that if you're going to be a broadcaster, you're going to be echoing the state line, and so you don't have any problem with that if you go into that line of work. So for those people to be leaving, very encouraging. Okay, let's go to all-out violent jihad. Mozambique. I'd like to spend some time in Mozambique. In Mozambique, David, we have the Islamic State Mozambique, ISM. And they have said that they are going to establish a caliphate in Mozambique. And they recently addressed a letter to the Mozambican Crusader Army. I think you probably are as surprised as I am to know that there are crusaders. And even more surprised to know that they're in Mozambique. In reality, of course, there has not been a crusade since 1291. And the Crusaders is just a term that jihadis always use for their opponents. In any case, they said, "We will escalate the war against you until you submit to Islam. Our desire is to kill you or be killed, for we are martyrs before Allah. So submit or run from us." And they gave them 3 choices. Submit to Islam.
3?
Yeah.
3 choices, huh?
Say not 3, I know.
Hang on. Let me guess, Robert.
Yes, sir.
It's convert to Islam.
Yep.
Or pay the jizya in acknowledgement of your inferiority, or we're gonna kill you or be killed.
That's uncanny. Really, I'm astonished. Have you really seriously thought about going to Vegas?
No, it's just funny because that's what you see in the Muslim sources. That's what you see from Muslim scholars for 14 centuries. Those are the 3 options. You have Sheikh Asim al-Hakim, who's still telling Muslims this on YouTube. I mean, he's telling people this on social media. Guys, we are not in a position to go around and killing them all right now. So we need to be preparing our community for a few decades from now when we're strong enough and we outnumber them. And then we're going to go door to door, giving them these 3 options: convert, pay the jizya, or we're going to kill you. Mm-hmm. And it's just amazing because that's in the Muslim sources. That's what Muslim scholars have been saying for 14 centuries. You've got very popular Muslims saying it today. But as soon as we say it, we're evil. Right?
Yep.
We're evil. Like, as soon as we say, guys, these are the actual options according to Islam, once they're in a position to implement and to offer us these 3 options, this is what Islam teaches. And we're evil for pointing it out.
Yeah, David, those are just the Islamists. That's just radical Islam.
Darn Islamist Muhammad.
Yep.
and Allah and rightly guided caliphs and
his Islamist Quran. He doesn't have the benign Quran that they have in the mosques in the United States. Anyway, that's Mozambique. In Bahrain, excavations underneath a mosque discovered a church and all kinds of Christian artifacts. Now, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing because why on earth, what do you think happened to the Christians who were in Bahrain back in the 6th century, which is what when this church dates to?
I would guess they all peacefully converted to Islam when they realized that Muhammad's a true prophet because they found him in the Bible.
Yeah, that must be that must be it.
Right there, Song of Solomon 5:16, ladies and gentlemen. They Christians see it and they go, I have to convert.
In reality, of course, Muhammad in a 9th century tradition is depicted as saying that he will expel all the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. The Christians in Arabia The Jews we know were massacred and exiled. The Christians were subjected to dimitude, forced to convert, etc. And Christianity and Judaism were indeed wiped out in Arabia. So we only have these archaeological discoveries, and nobody ever seems to say, well, what exactly ever happened to these folks? Why are they gone? Anyway, in Belgium, David, I got a question. This is a story about a gentleman named Hamza, and he had a knife. He went into a hospital emergency room, and he said he was going to kill everyone in it. And he also said something else. For $100, can you guess?
We'll ask the Wheel o' Terror.
Okay.
I can't even see it.
It looks like it's not stopped moving yet, but I think, yep, there we go. Allahu Akbar. That's really amazing. Yeah, that's exactly
magic,
what he
man.
said.
This thing is magic.
It's uncanny, really. Astonishing. And let's see, there was another one that was like that. I can't find it now. Anyway, in Michigan, up there in the Eastern District of Michigan, you know. You ever been up there? It's real nice, real nice there, you know.
Dearborn City Jail, my home away from home.
Oh yeah. Well, this is in Detroit. Aus Muhammad Nasser. I should have asked you what his name was, but in any case, Aus Muhammad Nasser, and he has been charged with supporting ISIS and possessing a destructive device. What I want to know is, all those peaceful Muslims in Michigan, why didn't they explain to him how he was misunderstanding Islam?
Yeah, unfortunately, they were too busy telling us that we're misunderstanding Islam. They never take the time to tell the jihadis that they're misunderstanding Islam. Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
I mean, if I saw a Christian group calling for the violent subjugation of the world, we're going to go around killing and slaughtering, and there were like lots of them all of a sudden, then my inclination would not be to run around telling everyone else to look the other way, right? Mm-hmm. My inclination would be, no, we got to do something about these guys. These are the guys that need to be refuted and exposed. In Islam, nope, it's nothing we can do about the jihadis slaughtering people in the name of Allah. All we can do is stop the rest of you from talking about it.
That's it. And so it's likely you have not heard of Mustafa Musab al-Awamer in Pittsburgh. And in Pittsburgh, he is a refugee from Syria, but he showed his gratitude to the country that let him in and gave him refuge by plotting to bomb a church right there in Pittsburgh. Mustafa Musab al-Awamer. And what I don't know is, why didn't his mosque take him aside, the people in his mosque, and tell him, look, those ISIS guys, they're misunderstanding Islam. They are misusing the peaceful religion that Muhammad gave us. I just don't get it, David.
It is one of those great mysteries, like so many people from around the world, from countries around the world, misunderstand Islam in exactly the same way. Right?
So strange.
Now, notice you have weird Christian groups occasionally spring up. You know, like let's say Westboro Baptist Church and so on, who think that it's their mission to go around protesting military funerals and so on. You don't see the rest of the world somehow interpreting it in the same way, right? You don't find Christians in Poland coming to the exact same conclusion, and Christians in Korea coming to the same conclusion. It looks like you had a weird guy with some weird views, and you can tell because no one else ever interpreted it that way. With Islam, we're told, this guy's just misunderstanding Islam. That guy's just misunderstanding Islam. And yet, people for 14 centuries have misunderstood Islam in the exact same way. Muhammad and his companions misunderstood it in exactly the same way. And you've got people around the world misunderstanding it in exactly the same way. And interestingly, when we read their sources, we come to the exact same conclusion. So we're misunderstanding it in exactly the same way. And the only people who aren't misunderstanding it always happen to be the people who never bother to read the sources. They're the ones who know true Islam. It's the only ideology in the world where the less you know about it, somehow the more of an expert you are.
Yeah, Pope Frank a few years ago said, authentic Islam and the proper reading of the Quran reject every form of violence. And I thought, well, now Pope Frank has made it very clear to me that he's never actually opened the Quran and doesn't have the slightest idea what's in it.
Oh, we're world-renowned Quran scholar, yeah. Pope Francis.
Yes, the grand sheikh of the Vatican. Vatican. Anyway, let's see. We have jihad in Israel. That was just, let's see, last night or this morning. Yeah, this morning. One person killed, 19 injured, series of coordinated bombings in Jerusalem. In Germany, a Muslim migrant from Afghanistan walked into a bar. And instead of just ordering a drink and going about his business, he pulled out a knife and warned the people that he had killed many people already in Afghanistan. Which made me wonder, well, then why did the Germans let him in? But of course, they know it's a religion of peace and everything's going to be okay.
You can make a joke out of that.
Yes.
And say, a jihadi walks into a bar. Bartender says, "What are you doing?" "We serve alcohol here. You're not supposed to be here." And the jihadi says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was a different place I was about to blow up." And that's it. That's all I could come up with on short notice.
Okay.
Maybe someone else could come up with a better joke out of jihadi walks into a bar.
A jihadi walks into a bar, ladies and gentlemen. That's this week's contest. Prize to be determined. Anyway, the consequences could be explosive. Let's see. There was one I had queued up here. Now, I'm sorry. I'm reverting to my old scatterbrained... Oh, here it is. Burkina Faso, David. Burkina Faso. There has been ongoing jihad activity for quite some time, and there have been many refugees as a result. And so the city of Jibo it had a population, rather, of 100,000 people, and with the refugees from jihad, it swelled to 300,000. And so what do you think the jihadis did then?
I would guess they get a bit more aggressive.
Yes, they raided Jibo. So it reminded me of Muhammad and how he exiled the Jews, the Banu Kainuka and Banu Nadir, from Medina, and they went to Khaybar, and then he raided Khaybar and massacred them there. And so, imitating Muhammad, we have the jihadis in Burkina Faso force all these people to flee from their homes, 200,000 people. They go to Jibo, and then they go to Jibo, the jihadis that is, and dynamite bridges, attack supply convoys, and now people are starving in the city, and they are surrounded. They can't get out and go somewhere else. Nigeria, we have witchcraft in Nigeria, and 15 women were put to death for practicing witchcraft under Sharia. I don't really know what to say about that either. It's just there.
No, it's a rough one because it's another situation in Islam where you could accuse anyone of that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like when they say in Pakistan, you get into an argument with someone. This guy made fun of Muhammad, and the mob forms and kills them. That you could do that. She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
I got better.
Monty Python, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, in the island paradise of the Maldives. The Maldives really is an island paradise, and it is a place that used to have quite a lot of tourism because of its, quote, pristine beaches and expensive island resorts, according to the Associated Press. But it's also a jihadi hotbed. Did you know, David, that the Maldives leads the world in people who went to fight for ISIS? 500,000 people went from the Maldives to go join ISIS. No, I'm sorry. The nation of 500,000 people had the highest number of jihadis. Sorry, not 500,000 people. And it still keeps going on. 14 people have just been arrested this week for jihad plotting in Maldives. You'd think they could just relax in their pristine island paradise, but nope.
Well, nothing destroys a island paradise like Islam.
Indeed. So let's see what else we got here. Oh, we have the women's section. Most of the stories out of the women's section come from the Indian subcontinent this week. Not all, but most. In one of them, a 50-year-old Muslim man faked an identity as a Hindu on Facebook and introduced himself as a Hindu man half his age, and made the acquaintance of a young Hindu girl whom he met with and molested. Where might he have gotten the idea that molesting a very young girl would be something that would be desirable for him to do?
Stuff like that's kind of all over the place in the Muslim sources about, capturing non-Muslim women and girls, and then of course you don't have any age requirements because your prophet thought of a 9-year-old as perfect target. So yeah, it's all over the place.
Indeed. I also thought about Maslama, the soldier of Muhammad who kills Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, and he asks if he can lie to him, and Muhammad says okay, and so he goes and pretends to be his friend and gets close to him and then kills him. That's the very short version of the story, but in any case, the precedent is thereby set that deception in order to lure someone so that they can be harmed, that's something that is actually sanctified by the example of Muhammad's permission to Maslama.
It's interesting how you've got all these ideas in the Muslim sources, and they all kind of tie together into some horrifying things, right? So you have like Muhammad saying that it's okay to lie to your enemies in order to get an advantage over them and so on. And then you've got it saying that, you can take women and girls as your captives, you can rape your female captives and so on. You get the ideas that, you don't need to be talking about grown women here. It could be girls and so on. And then you see you see how all these things come together and actually the fruit that they bear in the world. And it's like the rape gangs and it's like, my goodness, it's like, guys, ideas have consequences. And the people who actually want to deal with these ideas and refute these ideas are treated as the most evil people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And all the people who won't allow us to criticize these ideas, who are thus defending them from criticism and thus ensuring that the problems continue, they're the ones patting themselves on the back as the heroes of humanity.
Indeed. All right, so also in India, this woman Ira Khan, who is the daughter of an actor, Amir Khan, she got engaged to a Hindu man, Nupur Shikari. And one of the people responding said that she will soon face the wrath of Allah. Why do you think people are upset at the happy news of this woman's engagement to her Hindu boyfriend.
Yeah, that is confusing because, Islam says that a Muslim man can marry a Christian or Jewish woman. And since we all know that Islam advocates complete equality between men and women, then obviously Muslim women are going to be allowed to marry non-Muslim men, even four of them, since Islam is, completely equal in its treatment of men and women. So I have no idea, man. I can't figure it out. So it's another mystery.
Yes, indeed. In any case, there's more. There's always more. Bangladesh. We have a case of a man named Abu Bakr, and he's married, but he ends up getting involved with a Hindu woman named Kavita Rani, perhaps wanted to make her one of his other wives, but she did not know that he was already married. When she found out, she was, let's say, less than happy. And what do you think Abu Bakr did when he found her angry that she had discovered that he was already married?
I mean, plenty of options here. He could beat her.
He could beat her.
Kill her.
He escalated it a little bit. Yes, he. Yeah. How do you think he killed her?
I don't know, slitting her throat, chopping her head off, something like that.
That is correct. Once again, I tell you, you were still batting 1,000. Really. It's amazing. In India, also, there was a terrible story of Aftab Amin Poonawalla, who also murdered his Hindu girlfriend, Shraddha Walkar, cut her body into pieces, distributed it around the city of Delhi. As it turned out, he was killing her because she had said, really, we ought to get married. And he did not want to get married. And given 434, the chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran, saying, you beat a woman from whom you fear disobedience, he apparently thought that his actions were justified in going even farther than that. It's interesting to note that he was a vocal advocate for various leftist causes. He was a very good example of the leftist Islamic Alliance and had done a lot of posting about various leftist causes on social media. But as it turned out, he was a pretty hardline Islamic believer. The leftist Islamic Alliance, of course, we've discussed many times in the past. It seems to be fraying a little bit at the edges, but it's still very much alive.
Yeah, I've even seen that in gosh, I need to make a video about this, but when you had the Andrew Tate, of course, the Andrew Tate conversion, and then Muslims around the world praising it. It's actually Muslim women who are going, guys, we need to be a little careful here. One, because they're worried that, well, he already has been having a bad impact on young people. There was some, I think it was in the UK, that some social worker reported that all these young guys who are becoming abusive towards young girls, something like 65% of them were appealing to Andrew Tate and his teachings and so on. And so there's a concern about from Muslim women that Muslim men are going to become even more aggressive towards women and so on because of Tate. But they also are sharing other concerns, saying that people like Tate and the guys thumping their chest, we're strong, all other religions stupid, right? We're stronger than you. They're saying those guys are going to hurt their ability to form alliances. So they're actually Muslim women saying, hey, in order to to deal with the things in schools with LGBTQ issues, talking to kids and so on. It's like, hey, Muslims make up like 1% of the population in the U.S. It's saying we need to form alliances here. And they're talking about forming alliances with Christians on this stuff. And so they're pointing out, hey, guys, we're entering a stage where in order to sever ties with the extreme left that we've been tied to, we're going to need alliances. But you guys are running around saying Christians are a bunch of pansies and making fun of Christians. And so what are we going to do here? It's just interesting watching all of this play out, how it's always like the alliance with the left seemed to have a lot to do with, well, they're protecting Muhammad from criticism and Islam from criticism, and they're attacking the people on the other side. But now they're taking you down a road you don't want to go to. And so, let's form an alliance with the other side. And it's always, hey, whatever's in the best interest of the Muslim community at this moment, let's try to make an alliance out of that, when guys, we're sort of on to the long-term outcome of these alliances. So I don't think it's going to work very much, but yeah.
You and I are, the people who are clued in on Islam are, but a lot of the conservatives that I'm seeing who like what's going on with the Muslims being angry with the left about moral issues, they don't have a clue. And they think everything's going to be okay. We're going to make alliances with these Muslims. We're going to be a religious front for traditional morality against the radical secularists. And they're in for a rude awakening.
No, they are. And it doesn't, because I'm a guy like, hey, if I don't agree with you on one thing, I can still agree with you on something else. Like if me and a Muslim and an atheist were all in the same room, and the Muslim said, hey, I believe the universe was created, I would say, okay, well, I agree with that too. I agree with the Muslim. So I'm just not the sort of person who, I disagree with you on something, therefore, I can't agree with you on anything. And yet, when it comes to Islam, we are well aware of the fact that these alliances are always done for what is in the best interest of the Muslim community. And the moment their allies are no longer useful, we know what happens, because we've seen it for 14 centuries.
Indeed. But people don't know, as you have pointed out, people don't know that 14 centuries of history. And, well, I wrote the book, but I still wish people would read the history of jihad, because, for one thing, people who are interested in speaking to Islam, speaking to Muslims about Christianity, should know that this is a tremendous Achilles heel of the Islamic apologists. They're all ready with answers about various aspects of the Quran and the life of Muhammad, but they've never been challenged on Islamic history because people don't know it. And so they have no answers for that. And you come and say, well, you say the Quran doesn't mean this, and you say Muhammad doesn't mean this, and yet Muslims have acted this as if they thought that's what it meant. Here and here and here, at this point, all through history. So,
hey, Robert, you know what you should do? This would be awesome. It's another one of my awesome ideas that I forget about 5 minutes later, and so I want recorded. You should prepare like a 2 to 3 minute rant. A 2 to 3 minute rant that goes through the entire 14 centuries of jihad, right? So you're saying this guy misinterpreted it, and that guy, and then this guy, and then when they invaded India, and then when they did this, and then when they did that, and then when they came in, and then when they went to Spain, and so on. This awesome 2 to 4, 2, 3, 4 minute rant where you go through the entire history of jihad and show how relentless it is, and then just share the text of that and tell everyone to memorize it. Have thousands of people memorize it, and then as soon as someone says, "No, that guy just misunderstood Islam," oh really? So, and then everyone could just spit the same little rant out. Because you're like, what do you say, right? What do you say when you're saying this guy who's doing exactly what Muhammad and his companions and 14 centuries of jihadis did? Mm-hmm. He's got it wrong, and you've got it right, and you've never read a book in your life that has anything to do with any of this, and somehow you're right. Isn't it weird? Like it's like a global delusion.
Indeed.
Like people always ask, David, why don't you talk about Hinduism? David, why don't you talk about Buddhism? Because I don't know about these things, right? And I'm obviously not going to talk about things that I don't study, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, this one particular topic, Islam, every person in the world is an expert. And the less you know about it, again, the more of an expert you somehow are.
Yep. And that, why do you talk about Hinduism? I get that all the time because the Jihad Watch posts go up on Twitter, and then there's always some guy saying, but what about this that happened here? Supposedly these people did this or these people did that. And apparently you're not allowed to speak about jihad violence unless you're prepared to speak about every other violence done by all other people in all other circumstances. It's not allowed to specialize. You can specialize in anything else, but not this.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't focus on the one that's actually like trying to subjugate the entire world.
That's right. Can't do it. One more out of the, actually, couple things I wanted to hit. One was out of Morocco, more fraying of the leftist Islamic Alliance group of Muslims aged 13 to 24 chased down what is identified as an LGBT person. I guess that must be a trans individual, whether from man to woman or woman to man, who knows. But in any case, they brutally beat him or her, and that is something that probably most of the people who are on the left would be appalled to find Muslims doing. The whole Queers Against Islamophobia crowd would be shocked. But of course they don't hear about stories like this because they aren't reported in the news sources that they actually read. In Austria, another grateful refugee forced his wife to wear the hijab, and she didn't want to wear the hijab. So he stabbed her 11 times. And he's on trial now, and he said, I just wanted to scare her. Because he's on trial for attempted murder, and he says, hey, you don't want to kill her.
Yeah, 11 times, that'll do it.
Yeah, that'll scare her, certainly.
You want to scare someone, just go ahead and stab them 11 times. That'll do the trick.
They'll be plenty scared. But in any case, he did say he did not want to kill her. And this is important because there are many people who don't like when these kinds of stories are reported, and they will maintain, well, you know, Islam does not say you can kill your wife. That's right. Islam does not say you can kill your wife. Islam says you can beat your wife. And the problem is, even if you believe the people who say, oh, you can only beat her lightly, lightly is a subjective judgment. And so you end up with people understanding it in ways that end up treating the woman not all that lightly after all.
Yeah, and it's also important to keep in mind that lightly, the light beating versus the heavy beating is not. It's not the same distinction that we would think of when we think of beating someone lightly. The light beating was something that didn't do permanent damage, like breaking bones or something like that. I mean, didn't do long-term permanent damage, like leaving scars and so on. Mm-hmm. You could still beat a woman until her skin turned green, so covered in bruises. That was totally acceptable to beat a woman until her skin turned green.
It was probably a light green, and so it's lightly.
Yeah, light green. Beat her till her skin turns light green.
Yes.
But again, it's also with the beating your rebellious wife. It's a lot of these guys, I'm sure, are thinking once they get to a point, it's if they put their wives into an apostate category, like you are so rebellious, you are actually no longer a Muslim, then I'm going to treat you like an apostate.
That's it. All right, let's wrap up with Uruj Rahman. Uruj Rahman was a lawyer. She was disbarred, but she was a lawyer in New York City, very far-left lawyer. And during the George Floyd riots in 2020, she lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it into a police car. For that, she was facing 10 years in prison, but the Biden administration intervened on her behalf, and the judge at the trial called her a remarkable woman, and she got 15 months. Even that, she said, was far too harsh. She was hoping for no jail time at all. She will almost certainly not serve the whole 15 months and will go on to be a hero on the left. But it occurred to me that I think that if there had been somebody who was opposed to jihad violence in a public manner and who threw a Molotov cocktail into a police car, the Justice Department would not be intervening on their behalf, and the judge would not have called the defendant a remarkable individual. But when it comes to Islam, somehow leftists especially, they just get all googly-eyed and all their judgment goes out the window.
Indeed.
So on that happy note,
one quick comment.
Yes,
Wyatt
sir.
here. Oh, Wyatt is saying he's gonna have a hangout after this, and then next week. Wyatt, I have got like 11,000 things to do right now, but yeah, I'll be there. Tell everyone I'll be there next week.
I'm not seeing this, or I'd put it up on the screen. Sorry.
It's House of Hikmah.
Oh, House of Hikmah.
Yeah, I think he renamed his name's Wyatt, but I think he renamed it that because
Oh,
we were talking about House of Wisdom one night. I was like, how did
Yeah.
you not name it House of Hikmah? That sounds so cool. And he just stole he stole
Yeah,
that from
this
the
guy,
jihadis.
I'm also hosting a
preempted.
birthday.
Yeah, he knew Muslims would use that as House of Hikmah, so he preempted it and called his channel House of Hikmah.
He's also got your little guy. I know you told me who that is, but I don't know who it is. I've forgotten. The little guy, the bald-headed guy with the glasses.
Oh, that's Saitama. Where you been, Robert?
Well, I can't say because I don't reveal it publicly. I'm also hosting a birthday hangout for myself after next week's episode. It's my 26th birthday, so wherever that is, be there, folks. Anyway, yes. Anything to add, David?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, this has been a very fast hour and a lot of jihad this week. Let's hope there'll be less next week as more Muslims come to understand the truth about their religion of peace. But just in case there are any more misunderstanders or radical Muslims or Islamists or whatever you might want to call them, we will almost certainly be here. Thank you very much, and God bless you.